Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be learning how to bake this soft and delicious sardine and plain bread. This simple recipe will produce for you a perfectly textured bread with a soft and airy inside, as you can see. It is perfect for your sandwiches, toast, and with any other regular side dishes like beans, sardine, fried egg, custard, and many more. This recipe is going to be listed in the description box below, so do well to check it out. And without wasting any more of our time, let's get started. Firstly, we're going to proof our yeast, and the reason why we do this is to test our yeast to know if it's still active. So we're going to be using 1.5 cup of warm water at the temperature of 105 to 115 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 to 46 degrees Celsius. If you do not have a thermometer, you can test with your clean hand to see if the water is at the same temperature with your body. It still works. What you're not going to do is to use hot water, because hot water is going to kill your yeast, and if you use cold water, it's going to take longer time to proof your yeast. After your warm water, you're going to add your 3 teaspoons of yeast and your 1 teaspoon of sugar, which is going to act as the food source for your yeast to create carbon dioxide that is going to leaven or rise your bread dough. Proofing your yeast also helps to avoid wastage of ingredients in case you have a dead or expired yeast. After mixing properly, cover and set aside for about 8 to 10 minutes in a warm place. After 10 minutes, your yeast mixture should be frothy or foamy, just like this. That shows that your yeast is active and is ready to work in your bread dough. Next, in a clean bowl, we're going to pour in our mixture, our yeast mixture. After that, we're going to be adding our sieved flour. Always make sure to sieve your dry ingredients like your flour, your sugar, your milk, and so on. Even your baking powder, if you are using baking powder, just side info. But for this, we're not using baking powder. So this is 650 grams of flour that I've sifted, and I'm adding it to our yeast mixture. Next, we're going to be adding our sugar. If you're a sugar lover, you can do well to add more than the 70 grams in this recipe. Next, we're going to be adding our 40 grams of powdered milk, and ensure to sieve it to remove any hard particles from getting into your bread. And lastly, for this part or step, we're going to be adding our 1.5 teaspoon of salt. We're not going to be adding our oil and butter at this stage. We're going to be adding it much later. Next, we're going to use our clean hand to bring all of our ingredients together into one dough. Please, if you're mixing and you see that your ingredients are not coming together too much, probably towards the end, you can add 1 teaspoon of water. Don't add too much water, if not, you have a very watery dough. It gets watery easily. So with that said, I'm going to explain to you why it is crucial to knead your dough very well. I mean, to me, this is the most crucial step in the entire thing. It's not just sieving and bringing your ingredients together. If you can't knead your dough properly, you'll not have a good bread. Your bread will be anyhow. Do you understand? This kneading process ensures that your bread is soft at the end, because it adds air into your dough, and that air will allow your bread to rise very well when you keep it to rise later. Also, it helps with your protein structure that gives your bread that chewy and elastic feel when you're eating it. Do you get? If you want that, better knead your dough very well. Not only that, your kneading helps your ingredients to come together properly and be even. You don't want to be eating your bread and you're feeling one ingredient in one side, one other ingredient in one side. It does not make sense, even when others are eating it. Do you understand? Anything we're doing is we're doing well. So you have to take your time and your energy and knead it with all of your strength for at least, I would even tell you, if this is the first time you're doing it, knead it for 25 minutes, please. If this is the first time you're baking bread, knead for 25 minutes. If you have kneaded dough before, you could knead from 15 to 20 minutes, because after this first kneading, we're going to knead again using our butter and our oil. That's the last kneading process. So bread is hectic. You're going to keep kneading your bread till you notice that it is elastic and it is soft. You'll notice from the start when you just brought the dough together, it's going to be like very rough and it's going to be hard, but as you knead, you're going to notice that it's going to be elastic and stretchy and it's going to be soft. Although we're not done yet, that's when we're going to go to the next step of adding our butter, and we're going to be adding it bit by bit. We're going to divide our butter into 4 or 3 parts and add it bit by bit. The reason why is because it will scatter your dough. If you add it too much, it will be very, very hard to control and your entire workspace is going to be messed up. So to avoid that, we're going to add it bit by bit. The reason why we add butter and oil last, or the reason why we add butter and oil at all to our bread, is so that we can retain the moisture. Butter helps retain moisture in our bread so that it can remain soft for a longer period of time. It also helps to enhance the texture and the flavor of our bread, and it also helps in keeping our bread for long. That is extending the shelf life of our bread by keeping it moist. This bread in particular lasted for about 3 to 4 days in my fridge. Yeah, so the last day when I ate the bread, I actually toasted it with some eggs and it was still very soft and delicious. So that's because of butter. And for oil, it's almost the same thing actually. It keeps your bread from becoming dry. That's for the oil, and it also adds moisture to your bread by coating your protein strands, that's the gluten strands, making your bread less chewy. Not like it remove the chewiness at all, it just make it less chewy and more easier to eat, so you don't start having headache chewing your bread. So when you are done adding your butter bit by bit, we're going to go to the next step of adding our oil. Around the same way, just the same method, we're going to pour it bit by bit and we're going to knead it in. So like I said, we're going to add our oil bit by bit, and if you can notice, see how stretchy our dough is already. After adding our oil, we're going to do our dough test. This is to check the elasticity of our dough. If it easily breaks or tears when we expand it, then our dough is not ready. Then you have to knead at least for an extra 5 minutes. I kneaded for an extra time after this test to ensure that it was proper to bake. So if yours is tearing like that, do well to knead it again for at least 5 minutes. Now we're going to test again after we've kneaded for 5 minutes, and here, as you can see, it is not easily tearing, it's elasting properly. Then we know we're ready to go. When you're confident enough that you've kneaded your dough to its right consistency, you roll it up into a ball, as you can see. Then you oil your bowl, where you're going to leave it to rise. You are going to also oil your dough surface or your dough in entirety to keep it from drying out. Then, while our dough is rising, we'll be preparing our sardine for our sardine bread. You're going to separate your oil from your fishes and pour in your fish into a separate plate. Pouring your fish into a separate plate, and using a fork, you're going to mash your fish into smaller pieces, into smaller sizes. After an hour, your dough must have risen or doubled in size, like you're seeing in the video currently. You're going to go ahead and punch the dough to release air out of your dough. After which you're going to put on a clean work surface, because now we're going to roll out our dough. Before this time, you should have prepped your baking pan I was using a cake pan for this process, and I had dusted with flour. So I originally oiled the pans, then I dusted with flour. One of the pans was about size 10 by 5, and the other was 6.5 by 5.5. Hence the reason why I'm cutting one dough bigger than the other, because one of my pan is bigger than the other. You could use a scale or you could eyeball it like I'm doing if you know what you're doing, but most likely you should use a scale. After you've measured out your dough properly, we're going to get our rolling pin and we're going to oil our rolling pin, and then we're going to roll out our dough. Please, no more flour. Don't add much flour anymore. What we're going to be working with is oil. We're going to oil our rolling pin, as you can see in the video, and you're going to roll out your dough so that we can roll it into like a rectangular shape, so we can put it into our baking pan. Now it's important that you pay attention to this step, because we have to roll out your dough in such a way that there is no hole inside. You see how tightly I'm rolling it. You roll it and then you drag it back to pinch it. Then you roll and drag it back to pinch it. You roll and you drag it back to pinch it. You do that till you're done rolling your dough. When you're done rolling, at this last part, you're going to pinch your dough to close it up. This will prevent your dough from opening when it's rising for the second time. Allowing your dough to rise for a second time is a process known as double or bulk fermentation. What this helps to do to your bread is to improve the texture of your bread when it is baked, making it more airy and more lighter. It also allows your dough to rise to its maximum potential, giving it a good volume. For our second dough, which is our sardine bread, we're going to do the same thing we did for the first bread, which is we're going to roll it out with our oiled rolling pin. We're going to spread it enough to take enough sardine while we're rolling it. When you're done rolling out your dough, put in as much sardine as you like so. I'm not really a lover of plenty sardine in my bread, or I'm not really a lover of sardine bread, so I didn't put that much. So what you could do is you could put it in different steps, like put this one here like in the video, then put another layer at the front, so that when you're rolling and pinning the way I'm doing in the video and folding the sides, when you're doing that, when you get to the next layer, you're going to roll over it the same way and pin it. That way, when you're done baking and you cut your bread, you're going to see enough sardine in your bread. Once you're done rolling, like I did in the first bread, you're going to pin it like so, and then oil the surface and put it in your pan. After you've oiled the surface of your dough, do well to put it inside your pan that you've prepared already. Like I said, I had already dusted my bread pan or my cake pan. We're going to put it aside and allow it to rise for an extra 40 minutes. You should leave them to rise in a cool or a warm area in your house. If it's a cold area, it will take a longer time for your dough to rise, but it will rise eventually, but it's going to take time. So what you could do if you're staying in a cold area is you could boil water, pour it in a bowl and put it in the oven close to your bread pan. This will heat or warm the oven enough to create the atmosphere that your bread needs to rise. Also, if you're in a really rather hot climate, you could just put your dough in the oven and leave it there for the required time. After we've allowed our bread to rise, we're going to oil the surface of our sardine bread, just for aesthetics actually. We're going to oil it with our sardine oil and a little bit of our sardine to just give it that nice shine at the end of its baking. You could do that for your plain bread, so you could just oil it or not. I will show you something that you could do when you're done baking your plain bread. It will bring out the shine and it will help with your crust. By now you should be preheating your oven, and I think this is worthy of note for those that don't know. It's your degree, or the degree to which you preheat your oven, or the degree to which you bake your goods, depends on the size of your oven. If you're using a smaller oven, you should reduce your heat to a certain level than when you're using a bigger oven, because I think the space contributes to the even distribution of heat. If you're using a smaller oven, I would advise that you bake at like the one I use. I would advise you bake at 140 degrees Celsius and probably preheat at 150. If you're using a bigger oven, I would say you should bake at 170 to 175 degrees Celsius. For the top crisp, if you're using an oven that has a top burner, you could just put up the top burner for a while, like 5 to 7 minutes, so that it can brown the top of your bread a bit. For the sardine bread, I did not really need to do that at first, but I did it for a while. Our bread has baked perfectly, as you can see, and I'm just trying to bring it out of the pan so that it can cool before I cut them. Add butter to the top of your warm bread while it's still warm, so that it can melt over the surface, not too much. This will help to retain moisture on the top of your bread and to prevent your bread from, that's the top of your bread, that's your crust, prevent your crust from getting hard and drying out. It will also add shine to your bread and give it a more appealing look. So here is our finished product. This is what our bread looks like. Do well to bag your bread while it's still warm to still help retain moisture and to keep your bread soft. But do well to open your bread. I don't know if you've noticed, for most bakeries they do this, but they open the nylon so that your nylon does not sweat, thereby soaking your bread. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching and see you again in another video. Please do well to subscribe and press the notification bell so that you can be notified whenever we upload new videos. Our videos promises to be educational and informative. So do well to subscribe and follow us so you don't miss out on any of our videos. Bye.